Well, here we are, 2026, looking at the Immortal yet again. Now, I know many of you have turned to the dad rifle, that being the Martlets, and for good reason. It's a very, very good weapon. However, as you can see from the trials report this past week, the Immortal is gaining ground. Now, by no means are we back to all-time highs, but you can see it slightly chipping away at the Martlet's market share. Today, guys, we are going to be going over the Immortal and its new refurbished rolls. We'll be discussing this weapon for both PvE and PvP, but I want to preface all of this by saying that at one time, this weapon that you see here in front of you was the most dominant weapon inside of PvP. Guys, it was so dominant, Bungie had to nerf it like 4 different times. But here recently, Bungie has actually blanket buffed SMGs as a whole, most notably for controller players. Yes, controller players has had their stability increased by 10%, which is something we're definitely taking into account for this review, as we have played with both mouse and keyboard and controller. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting with the perks. In comms 3, we have Slice, Dynamic Sway Reduction, Threat Detector, Keep Away, Rangefinder, which actually does something now, it boosts our range, Hatchling, and Attrition Orbs. In our 4th columns, we have Target Lock, Kill Clip, Lone Wolf, Demolitionist, Master of Arms, Transcendent Moment, and Elemental Honing. Now, as you can see here, guys, this new version of Immortal has pretty much all the bells and whistles that made it good before, alongside some newer options as well. Let's start with columns 3. For PvE specifically, I'm looking at Slice, I'm looking at Hatchling, maybe even Attrition Orbs, and then for PvP, I've got Keep Away, I've got Dynamic Sway Reduction, but I also have Rangefinder. Now, you also have Threat Detector, but keep in mind, you have to be within 15 meters of your enemies in order for it to be procced, and multiple enemies if you're trying to get the full benefits. A good perk, but you're talking like shotgun territory, which is a dangerous place to be at, even with an SMG. Now, for my PvE players, definitely Hatchling here. The perk reads that precision final blows or rapidly defeating targets with this weapon spawns a threadling at the target's location. Pretty self-explanatory, but every precision kill is going to spawn a threadling at the target's location. Or you can score 3 rapid non-precision final blows, which will also spawn a threadling. Now, additionally, since this is the enhanced version, there's also a chance it will spawn 2 threadlings instead of 1, which was a change that was made back in Ash and Iron. So again, don't sleep on Hatchling, guys. Now, our other strand-related perk is Slice, which reads that casting your class ability allows this weapon to sever targets on hit for a brief duration, up to a maximum number of targets. Again, pretty straightforward here. You use your class ability, and then for the next 5 damage instances for 9 seconds, this will apply Sever to those enemies. It's not as flashy as Hatchling, but Sever is great at keeping you alive, especially in harder content, as applying Sever reduces enemies' outgoing damage by 40% for 10 seconds. Now, is Attrition Orbs worth looking at? Dealing sustained damage creates an orb of power. In this case, it's 19 shots to spawn that orb. Definitely a perk I value more on other weapons. For instance, things like our Kinetic Trimmer Multi-Mox, so good with Attrition Orbs. Now, for my PvP picks in this column, we got to talk about Rangefinder. You see, back in the day, Rangefinder was the perk. This is way before Bungie decoupled zoom from range, which meant anything that slightly tweaked your zoom substantially increased your range, which is exactly what Rangefinder did. But then Bungie removed zoom from affecting range, and then they heavily nerfed Rangefinder. With the launch of Renegades though, Rangefinder can now buff range directly by giving you +10 range while aiming down sights. Now, keep in mind, it still does affect your zoom, but that zoom does not have an effect on your range. But there are benefits for having increased zoom. Aim assist, fall off, essentially making the weapon more consistent at those greater ranges, even in territories where you do experience damage fall off. Now, Keep Away is also present here, which increases your reload speed, your range, and accuracy when no targets are in close proximity. It's a good perk here, guys. It provides the same range of +10 alongside increases there to our reload speed and a -5% accuracy cone growth. Now, enemies cannot be within 15 meters of you, so like the opposite of Threat Detector. Then finally, we have Dynamic Sway Reduction. This improves accuracy and stability while continuously holding down the trigger. Essentially, how this perk works, guys, is that holding down the trigger is going to increase stability and decrease accuracy cone growth and cone size, up to a max of +10 stability and -100% accuracy cone growth after firing 8 shots with the enhanced version. TLDR, it makes the SMG more stable and easier to control while simply laying on the trigger. Now, this takes us to our 4th column. We actually have a lot of different damage perks, along with a few non-damage options. Let's start with the one that caused so many problems years ago, that being Target Lock. Now, this perk was a menace on this SMG. It reads that damage increases increases the longer this weapon remains on a target. Now for this perk, essentially upon scoring 12.5% of the mag as hits, it will then start to increase damage up to a max of 45% after scoring 110% of the mag as hits. Now granted, in order to achieve that big damage buff, you got to have a means of feeding ammo back into the weapon. So think things like rewind rounds, triple tap, 4 times the charm, stuff like that. Not something you're going to be able to pull off here with Immortal. Where target lock really shines is combined with Peacekeepers. Essentially, you have a 2-in-1. You've got Peacekeepers with Mecha Holster, which simply rewards you for scoring SMG hits, maxing out at 100%. And so you can pair this with things like target lock. Is Immortal the best for this? Not really. Like, it's still good, and you got the strand synergies and whatnot. But if you want like the best SMG, Antidote from the Desert Perpetual raid, it's probably the best. So you can get rewind rounds, you get target lock on that thing, or the new M17 Fast Talker, also a very good SMG. And hell, we recently reviewed Peculiar Charm. It doesn't have the best DPS, but there's a particular role on that weapon that allows you to blow your load essentially forever. We showcased this when talking about the 3 weapons you need to snag for this expansion, and we couldn't overlook that shoot to loot kinetic tremor roll on Peculiar Charm. With that being said though, Immortal has the strand synergy. So even though you may not have the damage output of Antidotes, you've got other things. Now, does target lock shift the time to kill value inside of PvP? At base, Immortal is able to get a kill in 10 crits, 0.75 seconds. Now, if you have a weapon stat of 115 or higher, you can actually get the kill in 9 crits, 1 body in 0.75 seconds. But then we have target lock. Target lock is able to shift our forgiveness to 8 crits, 2 body at a 0.75 TTK. However, at 115 weapon stats or higher, with target lock, you're able to get the kill in 9 crits, 0.67 seconds. So yes, it does shift the TTK, or in the least, adds forgiveness. Now, other damage perks includes things like kill clip. This gives us a 25% increase in damage for 5.5 seconds when we get a kill and reload. Pretty good perk. Inside of PvP, this is able to shift our TTK value down to 0.58 seconds in 8 crits. Now, interestingly enough, Bungie has given the Immortal the perk Elemental Honing. Dealing unique elemental damage grants this weapon a stacking damage bonus. Now, how this perk works, guys, is that each unique elemental damage that you do, this will grant you a stack of elemental honing, which lasts for a whopping 23 seconds. Now, 1 stack isn't anything crazy. It's 2.5% increase in damage, hardly noticeable. But at times 5, you're getting a 35% increase in damage, which is quite nice. Now, inside of PvP for elemental honing, at times 1, this isn't really doing a whole lot, as it only increases our damage by around 1.25%. But this is where things change. At times 2 and at times 3, this starts to shift our time to kill here. With elemental honing times 2 proccing, we're able to get the kill in 9 crits, 0.67 seconds. And if you start the engagement with only times 1, but then Immortal procs times 2, you're still able to get the kill in 9 crits, 1 body, 0.75 seconds. Now, we also check times 3, as you are able to proc that somewhat easily, even inside of PvP, and this shifted our TTK value to 8 crits, 0.58 seconds. Elemental honing, guys, I know it's a perk that we look at and we go, oh my god, I gotta do this. I gotta apply different elemental damage effects. But if you consider whatever secondary weapon you're rocking, whether it's a GL swap or sniper swap, if you consider your neutral game abilities, if it's a grenade, if you're on prismatic class, you'll be surprised just how often you do proc elemental honing times 2, if not times 3. It's not nearly as difficult, and considering the weapon is strand, you're gonna be able to proc times 1 with just the weapon itself. So you sprinkle in a little damage from some other sources, and boom, you've got it, man. So definitely don't overlook elemental honing. Now, Master of Arms is also another really good perk that's present here. Kills with this weapon improves the weapon's damage for a short time. Now, how this works is that a single kill with any weapon is going to grant Immortal here Master of Arms times 1, which is a 15% increase in damage for 8 seconds. And then when you score another kill with times 1 active, you'll be granted times 2, which is a 25% increase in damage for around 5 seconds. Now, the buff does drop down to times 1 when the timer expires, but it's really easy to reproc. I gotta show love to Master of Arms. It was the OG Recluse perk, but this takes us to an unusual perk in our 4th column, Lone Wolf. Now, this is normally a perk you would find in the 3rd column. Lone Wolf slightly improves aim assist, aim down sight speed, and airborne effectiveness, and it increases these effects when there are no nearby allies. Now, Lone Wolf is a fantastic perk, one of my favorites. The enhanced version passively grants +6 aim assist, a 0.85 times ADS duration multiplier, +16 airborne effectiveness, and those benefits essentially double when you have no allies within 15 meters of you. So again, you have the base version of the trait, which always gives you benefits, and then the doubling of those traits when no allies are nearby. The question is, would this perk be worth using in columns 4? I mean, you almost look at it and you think to yourself, man, could you do a Rangefinder Lone Wolf combination or like a Dynamic Sway Lone Wolf and just create the most secure, most stable SMG that just won't miss? In some ways, yes. I mean, that's exactly what you can pull off here. And that's when we get into the subjectives of the different roles that we played with, which we'll touch on in just a moment. Now, this takes us to the origin traits on Immortal. And there's actually 3 of them. You've got Fleet-Footed, you've got Roar of Battle, and you've got Field-Tested. Now, Fleet-Footed is the Trials origin trait, and it reads that dealing damage grants you a short window of increased movement speed and airborne effectiveness. Landing a final blow increases these effects. Now, dealing damage with this trait is going to grant Fleet-Footed ×1. It's also going to give you plus 15 AE, alongside the increased movement speed for about 6 seconds with the enhanced version of this origin trait. Now, if you do get a weapon kill, this is going to grant you ×2, which essentially doubles these benefits. Then we have the Roar of Battle. It's a general Crucible origin trait that reads, being in combat for a short duration increases handling and stability. Now, guys, you don't have to be in battle for long. Like literally within 2 seconds, this will grant you plus 10 stability and plus 10 handling for about 6 seconds. Then finally, we have Field Tested, a very good PvE origin trait. Defeating targets or dealing damage with this weapon gradually increases range, stability, and handling, as well as reload. As you are getting kills and hits, this progresses a counter, which then will grant stacks of Field Tested up to a max of 5 stacks. And the benefits are definitely worth it, guys. And this is where I really like this perk inside of PvE, because it gives you all the way up to plus 50 reload speed, which is wild. And the buff is only removed on death, which does mean that PvP is much more difficult to proc, but inside of PvE, that's doable. Now, with all that being said, what is the God Roll on Immortal, and how does it feel on both the mouse and keyboard and controller? Let me just say, on mouse and keyboard, I always felt like SMGs were phenomenal, like substantially better than controller by a large margin. But guys, a lot of the gameplay you see right here, this is controller gameplay. Hence why my turn speed is so slow. Yes, I play on 5. Look, man, it's what I'm comfortable with. I'm not a controller player, but this SMG on controller felt so good. And I tried a variety of different things. We went and maxed out our range. I'm talking full bore, ricochet rounds, rangefinder with target lock. And despite my stability stat being so low, hot damn it, fellas, this thing felt so stable. It was an absolute bullet hose. And I'm starting to think that certain 1v1s that I won with the Immortal, I'm not sure I could have been able to pull that off on mouse and keyboard. What I'm really trying to say is that the stability buff is noticeable, or in the least, the Immortal specifically is worth using on controller. This is not a mouse and keyboard weapon. It is most definitely a good weapon on consoles and controller. And yes, we're going to be plugging up the PlayStation 5. It's been a long time, console boys. I'm about to come check your lobbies out. We're going to see if On can hang. What I would deem to be the God Roll. Look, man, I like maxing out my range. I mean, we full sent it with Rangefinder, with high range. The only thing I probably would have liked to have changed is instead of ricochet rounds, go high caliber rounds. I know you don't get the stability bump, but instead of just like full sending with full bore, I would probably be okay with, say, corkscrew rifling, or hell, even small bore. Give me a stability bump and a range bump. These things are greatly appreciated, but high caliber rounds, I think, would have helped me in the 1v1s that I did lose, which was actually surprisingly against sidearms. Yes, there's still sidearms out there that just absolutely melt within those ranges, and those are really the only times that I felt like I would lose duels. But for the most part, I had like a 50% success rate against most sidearm users. It really just came down to who shot first, who outflinched who, which is why high caliber is so nice. But again, for me, Rangefinder is a very, very good perk in that third trait column with a very high range roll. Slap on some high cal. Could you do dynamic sway? Absolutely. And I did try out dynamic sway with Lone Wolf. I full sent it when it came to just purely consistency. And yes, I felt it. It felt good. It felt solid. It was sticky. And I would say if you don't feel comfortable with your SMG shots, hell, use that combination, guys. But this will leave you in a difficult situation at times, because sometimes I did run into a situation where if I just had a little more damage, I would have won that 1v1. And that's where things like target lock comes in. That and the 115 weapon stats, squeezing out that extra little bit of damage to drop that TTK value. But then we have elemental honing. Elemental honing ×1, not that impressive, but elemental honing ×2, now that's doable. If you're rocking like a sniper rifle, for instance, I'm rocking Icebreaker, a single Icebreaker hit, and then a swap off there to Immortal, boom, you've got elemental honing ×2, and you're able to secure that kill in 0.67 seconds. And say you get like a grenade hit with a different elemental effect, and you get elemental honing ×3, well, hot damn it, fellas, you can get the kill in 0.58 seconds in 8 crits. It's crazy to say, but elemental honing actually has a place here, and the buff lasts for an extremely long time. And this is how I would choose between elemental honing and target lock. If you just want to brainlessly run in every single time and use nothing but your SMG and never use any of your other weapons, and hell, not even your abilities, you just want to be a peacekeeper hoe, all right then, I guess target lock is for you. But for everybody else, elemental honing is pretty nice, guys. So for my PvP players, I would consider elemental honing with rangefinder or even dynamic sway if you're just looking for a little more in that consistency. For my PvE players though, I still maintain what I said earlier. Slice, hatchling, that's probably the route I would go, simply because I want the strand synergy in combination with a variety of damage perks, including the likes of elemental honing. Is there a play to be made with target lock and say attrition orbs? Sure, you can use that for damage phases and whatnot. It won't be as strong again as Anidate, but an alternative for sure. My tier 5 God roll for PvE players would be hatchling, attrition orbs, and slice in columns 3. Columns 4 would be target lock, demolitionist, and master of arms. Combine that with a magazine boosting perk, and you're doing good, fellas. And really, for the PvP tier 5 God roll, that dynamic sway, rangefinder, maybe keep away. And look, some people really like slice, but that really is dependent on whether or not you have your class ability up. Yes, people use slice inside of PvP, but I leave that up to you. But combine that with target lock, elemental honing, and maybe lone wolf if you're trying to full send it for that consistency. All I can say, guys, is that Immortal is a force to be reckoned with. And if you're a controller player and SMGs have rubbed you wrong in the past, I urge you to give them a go, especially this weapon right here. I felt like I was shredding people today, and I can only imagine how good this SMG is going to be in the hands of an actual controller player. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.